Well, it's an important week for the future of Ukraine. This Tuesday, threats from Russia's authoritarian president. Vladimir Putin's words from Moscow this afternoon. If Europe wants war, Russia is ready. Hawkish remarks that dialed up the tension ahead of the visit of the US President Donald Trump's chief negotiators to Washington, Steve Witkoff. Trump's longtime business associate. He's an open admirer of Putin. Putin, we remind you, wanted for war crimes in Ukraine. Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, he was there too. The meeting preceded by days of frenzied diplomacy from Florida to Geneva to Abu Dhabi, comes as Washington says it's very optimistic about ending Europe's bloodiest conflict since World War II, though Washington's plans still favour Putin's playbook. Well, let's hear Putin's words, the clear threat to Europe, ahead of his sit-down with Witkoff and Kushner.
We do not intend to fight Europe. I've said this 100 times. But if Europe suddenly decides to wage war against us and starts it, we are ready right now. With Ukraine, we are acting in a surgical and careful way. It's not war in the full modern sense of the word. If Europe chooses to start a war, the situation could very quickly reach a point where there'll be no one left for us to negotiate with.
Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia. Let's bring in Gulliver Cragg. Gulliver, of course, is our Ukraine correspondent, joining us live from Kyiv. Gulliver, good evening to you. Putin's words there, hawkish indeed. Do we interpret this as a real threat or just hot air, for want of a better phrase?
Well, I'd like to take this opportunity to quote Alexandra Matvichuk, the Ukrainian Nobel Peace Prize laureate. She shared it with Russian and Belarusian human rights activists in 2022. She was asked recently in an interview about something Vladimir Putin had said, and she said, "I do not know why we have to continue to take these words seriously or really pay attention to anything he says. He's obviously a liar." Now here he goes again, saying, well, we don't have any intention to make war with Europe. He said that about Ukraine as well. They said they wouldn't invade Ukraine. Saying that they are attacking surgically is quite offensive, I think, to all of the Ukrainian civilians who've lost loved ones or had their homes destroyed. Kyiv bears the scars of Russian, the lack of precision, I would say, of their attacks. But the one thing we can say about the attitude that Vladimir Putin was showing today is that it certainly seems pretty combative, and it doesn't look like a man who's about to surprise the world by giving into any kind of compromise deal that the Americans have reportedly, although we don't know any details of it, negotiated with the Ukrainians and the Europeans and were supposed to present to the Russian president today. So everyone here is just expecting Vladimir Putin to say no to whatever they're proposing. And then the question is, what are the Americans going to do next? What attitude are they going to take? And who is going to come out on top, if you like, in what Ukrainians view as a battle between the likes of Steve Witkoff and the likes of Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, in terms of what is the best approach to take towards Ukraine. I think the Ukrainians are quite pleased that Jared Kushner is also there with Steve Witkoff. Members of the Ukrainian negotiating delegations, both on and off the record, singled out Jared Kushner for praise. I think they were quite surprised by what they described as the constructive attitude that he brought to the talks.
And it's an interesting take, Gulliver, as always from you. The issue regarding what's happening on the ground now, Russia says it's taken 2 towns in the Donbass. What is the real situation? 3, excuse me. What is the real situation as you know it?
Well, those 3 towns, actually only Pokrovsk is in the Donbass. It's probably the most important. The battle for Pokrovsk has been going on for 14 months in its most intense phase. It's a strategic town. It was a really important logistical hub. Its strategic importance, of course, has diminished gradually as its population has hollowed out and its buildings have been destroyed. It's a railway junction, but I don't suppose the railway is usable at the moment. The Russians say that they now control all of it. The Ukrainians absolutely deny this. I spoke today to Ukrainian military expert Alexander Kovalenko, who explained that the Russians do control the southern part of Pokrovsk to the south of the railway tracks, and that is the larger part of the town. But he said that the Ukrainians' hold on the northern part is still pretty strong. But what you've got to understand also is that this is a battle more and more being fought in the air. There are fewer troops on the ground. It's not always clear who controls what. There are varying assessments of how much of Pokrovsk the under Russian control, but I haven't heard anyone credibly saying that they control 100% of it, except the Russians themselves. The other two towns Vladimir Putin mentioned are in Kharkiv region. It's Vovchansk in the north and Kupiansk in the east of Kharkiv region. In Vovchansk, the Russians clearly control the northern part of the town. Again, it's been significantly destroyed, but the Ukrainians say that they're still fighting there. And in Kupiansk, in the east of Kharkiv region, they've actually announced this evening, Colonel Syrski, the head of the Ukrainian armed forces, that they've staged a counterattack in that town, Kupiansk, and forced the Russians out of part of it. I mean, we're getting to the stage where it's very much one side's word against the other, but what can we do except remind you that, on the whole, the Russians have been more economical with the truth than the Ukrainians, though the Ukrainians also do have a reputation for denying that they've lost control of a certain town when, in fact, they have.
Indeed, and it's worth underlining for people too that peace could happen any time, of course, if Russia just decided to stop attacking Ukraine. Gulliver, as always, thank you very much indeed. Gulliver Cragg, our correspondent in Kyiv.